everyone. Hello, General Gainey, ma'am. How are you doing? It's always so great to see you.
One has to find the unmute button. It's great to see you all.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is 1700 Central Time, 1800 Eastern Time, and where General Lodi is, if I'm not mistaken, if I did the math. Okay, ma'am, I'm not even going to do the math because I have to think hard about where we are and where you are. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We know people are going to continue to come in tonight as they're getting off work, they're coming out of traffic, but we always start on time. And we want to make sure that we know that the panel members know that their time is valuable. So we thank you so much for joining us this evening. And before we get started, we always start out with a prayer. So I'm going to go on and let Mari, Lieutenant Colonel Lee, if you'd like to lead us in prayer.
Ladies and gentlemen, please bow your head. You could pray to the God of your understanding. I'll pray to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Dear Lord, thank you so much for giving us the blessing you're giving us today. Thank you for allowing us to be here and learn from each other and mentor each other and guide each other through this ordeal that is the military life and the DoD life. Dear God, we pray that you give us understanding, knowledge, wisdom, and humbleness to accept what we are being taught and to know that we're not the one that know all, but to learn from each other, God, and make this army and this world a better place. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And if I could ask for everyone to turn and your camera, your microphones on mute. Miss Rebecca Williams, if I could get you to turn your camera or your microphone on mute. There we go. So we can make sure we hear everyone tonight. And again, if I can ask everyone to turn your microphones on mute so we can hear the speakers tonight. And when we have an open time for a question and answer period, we'll have you raise your hand or we'll have you come on and ask your questions. This evening, please feel free to also put your questions in the chat room so that we can make sure we answer them for you for the evening. For those of you that don't know me or are just joining the program to be able to hear us, I am Colonel Clydea Pritchard Brown. I'm the founder of the Female Mentor and Morale Program, which we just reached our 3rd year anniversary. So we started in 2020. And so I just want to thank all of you that are joining us again and coming back to us. Thank you for joining us. And for those of you that are new, thank you for coming in for the first time and wanting to sit in and listen. We have a phenomenal show for you tonight, a phenomenal event where we have 2 awesome women. Now, they're already awesome women and history makers in their own rights because they're doing fabulous and wonderful things out there. But they, as a team, made history. And I'm so honored to bring that to you because they have had time to grow together, to learn from each other, to see each other's different ways, to learn the in and outs. And as you all know, some of you know, I have a twin sister who's on the line right now. So sisters know each other. And, you know, we're the sounding boards. We know the good, the bad, and the ugly. We know things we're going to take to our graves. Taken to our graves. But please join me in welcoming this evening. We have Lieutenant General Maria Barrett, who is the Commanding General of U.S. Army Cyber Command. And she has been doing wonderful and amazing things. And I'm so happy we have Army Cyber online because hopefully we will have no issues with our comms tonight. And with that, she has an awesome sister, and that is Major General Paula Lodi. And I want to thank her. She is the Commanding General of the 18th Medical Command at Fort Shafter, Hawaii, which is why I said the time difference is off. So ma'am, thank you for joining us. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us. I'm not going to tell your resume because I know you have a story, and I know I want you to put in there how you all as a team, as individuals, came to be the general officers that you are. So ladies and gentlemen, please sit back and enjoy this conversation, the discussion for this evening, because what we want to do is talk about the importance of having a support system that's going to keep you motivated in your lowest moments in time. Who can you call on? I know I call on my sister all the time and then call my mom, and we actually talk every day, at least 5 times a day. But for those of you that may not have a sister or a brother or someone that you can turn to, who do you turn to? Whether you're born into a family, whether you're adopted by a family, or the people around you, you call your family. So this evening, we're going to have a great discussion with these 2 ladies, wonderful ladies. And we want to thank all the general officers that are on the line. that have joined us, along with all the enlisted, the civilians, and everyone that's going to join us for the evening. So without further ado, I want to open it up to Lieutenant General Barrett. Ma'am, if you could start us out, and I know both of you are probably going to intertwine your stories. Just make sure you remember right, because my sister and I can't get stories right. I'm like, I didn't remember it there. No, it didn't happen. Yes, it did happen, so help each other remember these things. But without further ado, ma'am, if you could get it started. And General Lodi, feel free to correct her if there's some sort of, if you really did it and she didn't. All right, ma'am, it's your floor.
Well, thanks, Day, for the warm introduction and really for inviting us here today to participate in this. So, I think I'll go back to the very beginning. Paula and I shared a room growing up. And so when you're roommates, you start to, very early on, you're being conditioned to being part of a team. One person can't stay up late making noise, one person getting up early in the morning. And so then in concentric circles, we grow this team. Paula and I are number 4 and 5 of 5 children. There was one bathroom upstairs where all the bedrooms were. And so, your actions have consequences. You can't stay in the shower and lock the door. This is just normal big family stuff. And, you don't operate as an individual because there are consequences for the rest of the family members should you lock the bathroom door with only one bathroom there. So, that was our upbringing, and it wasn't an extravagant upbringing, but we got by, and it was we had responsibilities in the house, from yard work to making sure that we took in the laundry and things like that. So there were responsibilities there. I think the other thing from a teamwork standpoint was Paul and I played soccer in high school together. We both played in the backfield. And so teammates again on the soccer field. We really, even though my father was in, Paula might talk a little bit more about my father, but the one thing I would say is we were not exposed to the military to the degree that most of our young soldiers coming in are today. My father did not talk about his service a lot. We knew he was in World War II, but at the time there were people in his friend circle who, for one reason or another, did not participate in World War II. And so that's kind of painful to not have served during that time. So we didn't really know much about his service until after he had passed. My brother went to Norwich, but he didn't pursue ROTC. And so he finished college and didn't go into the Army. So we might have had a little exposure to that. I think there was one high school classmate who got a 4-year scholarship for college, but that was it. That there wasn't really a big preponderance of people doing this. And so you might ask, how did I end up going to ROTC? And, the thing was, I went to college. I was going to study international relations. And after that, I was going to pursue a career in the Foreign Service. I knew I had to pay for college, and I wanted to help my parents out. And so I was walking past the ROTC table at at some fair that they were having for freshman students, and signed up and got a 2-year scholarship. And I thought this, and you might be surprised, or it was a very transactional thing. I was going to join ROTC. I was going to get the scholarship money, do my 4 years, get some practical leadership experience, and then go back into where my passion was for serving, which was in the diplomatic corps. Funny thing happens, life's plans sometimes don't exactly, or maybe life is really more about the journey of the opportunities that are presented to you along the way. And so I would say there's probably several reasons in no particular order that I ended up staying. I had a great boss in my first unit. The Army kept offering me great other assignment opportunities. I met my husband. I enjoyed the responsibility that I was given and serving in this capacity. And I went to Desert Storm. And that is significant because, as I mentioned, joining ROTC was, in my opinion, a pretty transactional decision. I think Desert Storm reinforced for me, there's the importance of when you have to lead soldiers into a dangerous area, into combat, into conflict. The weight of your responsibilities now are very clear to you. And if this is not in your core, if this is not part of why you exist in the Army, you're going to have a tough road, and the soldiers will see through you. And so I think I consider Desert Storm kind of that moment where it all comes together and you figure out what your values are. I think after that, probably what I would say in terms of the, leaning on Paula as sisters as we went through our careers. I was having a conversation with some folks going through the pre-command course, and I have observed among many officers who serve, and probably I could apply this to warrant officers and senior enlisted as well. Some people do not have any issues with being vulnerable, with leaning on, a sister or a friend for help. And I would say there is another group of people that have a really tough time being vulnerable in this business. So much is expected of us. And we have to be careful about how that manifests in our heads in terms of whether or not we are looking at things through the appropriate lens. Are we being too hard on ourselves? If we could go back to when we were lieutenants, I would say that was probably the last period of time where I really was very cognizant about being a woman and having to try harder and all those other things. And then finally I realized my boss just really wanted me to be a good leader and accomplish mission outcomes. And then I kind of forgot that I was the only woman on the team or the only woman in the room. And then I spent the rest of my career not really thinking about being a woman. And we can ask questions about that later. But going back to this piece of being vulnerable, the parallel that I drew to the students in the pre-command course is we have something now with suicide prevention where, we would approach somebody and say, please take my weapons in a time of stress. And we do that when we are feeling good and we are strong. We make that contract, that pact with somebody. My sergeant major is the one that would take my weapons. And I offered, I said, maybe we should do this also. There's a person that you go to if you don't have a sister or somebody like that, that you would select somebody to hold your secrets, to hold your insecurities dear. So that you can have this space where you can work through something, because we can be terribly hard on ourselves to a point where it's detrimental. And I would just offer that to you. It's been great to lean on Paula and just kind of, and also just vent with no repercussions, right? Because she'll keep that. And I get to return the favor when it's her turn. And so with that, I'll probably turn the mic over to Paula now and see if she tells things any differently.
All right, ma'am, it's on you.
All right, Dea. So thank you for inviting me again. And I see that I see your cleverness in making sure that there would be no problems with the comms by pairing me with my sister for this engagement. So I see you. Yeah, so as Maria said, I am the youngest of the 5 in our family. And so with that comes a sense of somewhere on the spectrum between your parents have completely given up on and taken their eye off of nurturing or trying to discipline you. So I was a bit of a rebel, probably. My father passed away when our father passed away when I was in high school, a senior in high school. So I was the last one at home, and I was the only one at home, still at home when my dad passed away. So the launch into college was a little bit rough. And so I had always wanted to join the Army from a very young age. I had watched a documentary on the first women at West Point, and I had said, that looks like something I would like to do. I would like to join the Army. It serves other people. It incorporates physical fitness. I was athletic. It just seemed like a really good fit. And so when I was already on a trajectory to do something like ROTC, when I headed into college, and I was on an ROTC scholarship. But again, that launch was a little rough, and I found that ROTC was really the only thing that really helped ground me through 4 relatively rocky years of college. And even in that, it wasn't easy. Not a lot of people were doing ROTC in New England in the late 80s. And so it wasn't nearly as acceptable or prominent as it might be today. But ROTC really was that thing that anchored me, and I had my eyes on the end state of 4 years, and I would be a second lieutenant in the Army, and I could finally live the life I imagined for myself. And I really remember getting to OBC at Fort Sam Houston and calling my mother and telling her that no matter what else I had kind of screwed up or misstepped in my life along the way, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing. And I will say, with few exceptions in the last 32 years, that has not changed for me. But I think that the loss of my father and the struggle through college, and then landing at OBC and feeling that sense of belonging, and feeling like I was around very like-minded people who had the same goals and aspirations as I did, to serve others and to lead people, really is where my journey started in terms of embracing this thing called the Army family. And it really shaped me, because it's where I felt I fit. Now, that's not to say I abandoned my real family, my 4 brothers and sisters, or my mom along the way, but I really had a sense that family was bigger than biological, and that this Army career was going to be about finding family wherever the Army put you. In fact, in my promotion about a month ago, I gave great acknowledgement to teachers and coaches that shape us into people who want to live a life of service. And Marie and I were both blessed that both our parents were teachers, were educators, that our dad was an elementary school principal, that our mother was a teacher, and that when our mother left the workforce to raise children, they both stayed very active in the church and in the community, and kind of had that imprint on us. So throughout my career, really, I've been about making the people that I've been blessed to lead feel like they are part of a family. And I think that I tend to carry people along with me. And I always like to say that, your subordinates, if you're blessed to be a leader in the Army, your subordinates have a choice after you're not in their rating chain, or you don't have any UCMJ authority over them. they actually have a choice on whether or not they want to be a part of your life, or they want you to be a part of their life, and whether they consider you a part of their extended family. So, I've made it a little bit of a life's work to build these enduring relationships and to treat every command that I've been blessed to have as a place where people can feel like they can make mistakes and feel like the relational side of things is bigger, and that the mission, not at the expense of the mission, but that the mission really relies on the tightness of those relationships to really come together. It has been an incredible blessing to have a sister who's also in the military, because there are a lot of times when your siblings who aren't in the military just can't relate or don't understand. And so that's really been a blessing. And I'll say, honestly, full circle, when I got promoted to Brigadier General and there was a lot of media on myself and Maria, and we were constantly asked this question about upbringing and the impact of family on our careers. I think I had inadvertently made a separation or distinction that perhaps my family didn't have as much to do with my success as I really thought they did. But the more the media inquired about our upbringing and the role of our siblings and our parents on our success, the more I really came to a stark realization that there's a little bit of all of our siblings and all of their support along the way that has given us kind of the confidence and the courage and the inspiration to really be where we're at. As I kind of reflect, and I have a really, if the theme of this is making history a family affair, full disclosure, I have 2 daughters, and both daughters serve in the United States Army Reserve. One is in Bolick right now, and one is just called me today with asking for advice on where she should do cadet summer leadership training as she heads off to advanced camp this summer. But I just reflect, I can't help but reflect on what a different environment we have for women today in the Army. And I think 30 years ago, it was a lot about fitting in. As Maria said, I know me personally, I spent the first 8 years of my career in brigade combat team, division support command type units. I was very conscious of the fact that I was a woman, and I was very conscious of the fact that I was a minority in a room usually full of male counterparts. And I did my very level best to fit in and not to do anything that would identify me as being different, other than to perform at a level where no one would question whether or not I belonged in the job I was in, or in the unit I was in, or serving in the capacity I was in. And so when I look at my own daughters and I talk about, 30 years later, we wrestle with some incredibly hard things right now, but at least we are wrestling with them. And we're not stuffing them over in a corner, not to be acknowledged and not to be addressed. And I think that we didn't even talk about diversity. We didn't even, again, my personal story is that I just tried to fit in. And my answer to anybody who asks what I would have done differently is I said I would have realized a whole lot earlier in my career that you cannot stand out if you're trying too hard to fit in. And so I think it's great. I think it's great that we have forums like this. I think it's great that me and my sister happen to be general officers. I'm grateful that the Army creates the space for 2 very, very different individuals with two very, very different career paths can find themselves at the pinnacle of their respective careers. And no matter what the press might want to make that into a foregone conclusion because we somehow sat around our dinner table strategizing this at a very young age, I can assure you, Maria may say differently, but this was not, this was not anything but the good fortune of being in an army that lets talented people achieve whatever they are capable of achieving when the conditions exist and when they set their mind to it. And so I'm really grateful for forums like this. I'm grateful for the discussions that they promote. And I'm really, really grateful to be able to influence the future generation of women leaders in the Army.
Ladies, that was awesome. And I really appreciate your candor and the understanding that most people think, just sitting as a sister who has someone that's in the military and can share those same thoughts of understanding what I'm going through and what we're going through. When you two talk about your history or your upbringing, so many people have in their minds that, oh, they were born generals, or this is exactly what they wanted to do, or, that's all they focus on. And ma'am, you said it best when you're saying people think you were sitting around a dinner table strategizing about your careers as military general officers. And so it's good to understand that you both had different perspectives of how you came to be in the military. Something as simple as my sister not only joined the military to finish college because we had a single mom who was like, I don't have any more money. What are you going to do? And so hearing your story, there's so many reasons people come to join the military or join the government, because I'm honored to have civilians that are part of this forum. And even though we wear uniforms, the story probably fits along with some of what they chose to do when they chose to become GS employees or Department of the Army employees or contractors. And so with that, I'm going to start out the first question, and we're going to open it up to question and answer period. And please feel free to answer, both of you. We'll call out the names, but we want both of you to be able to answer the question. And so when looking at the building blocks of your foundation of coming from home, and I appreciate understanding that you're the last one. My twin is the baby of our whole family. It's only 4 of us, but understanding that your sister set a tone. Ma'am, General Barrett, you set a tone of one direction and she had another direction, but you're now together. How do you advise women and men, but women as they're coming through and they're in a new environment where there's new generations of those that either do or don't accept them? Yes, we have come so far with women being accepted in the military, but we still have generations of soldiers coming in and civilians coming in who don't think we belong. What do you advise them if they don't have sisters or brothers at home? How do you advise them to reach out and get someone, a mentor, a friend, a counterpart that they can trust, which takes time to build, but they can trust? As a leader, how do you advise them to go out and seek that guidance? Because they can't always come to you or me or, the leader. How do you advise them to go out and seek someone that they can lean on? And General Barrett, I will let you answer that one first, ma'am.
Yeah, if you absolutely find yourself in an organization and you are so reluctant to reach out to somebody to develop that trust. I think, first of all, trust is an interesting thing. It gets established over time. But I think I would recommend to young people to do 2 things. First of all, look at people in your organization and see what kind of leadership and behavior they model. And if that's what you want to be like, you might want to start with them. I want to be like you, and so that can be the start of the relationship of, I understand, I think I'm looking at somebody who is a good leader and I want to know more. And then I think the relationship will build. I think the other thing is, and it kind of goes back to what I was talking about with, how do you find somebody? If you are a person who self-identifies as I am not comfortable putting myself out there and being vulnerable with my peers or with my bosses. Then I think you have something that you need to work on. And I think the chief trust officer in my organization is the chaplain, right? I'd go to the chaplain and go, even if it's not going to be him or her who is the one that is going to be the person that you lean on, they will help you navigate who the best person might be, or you really getting enough gumption up to find somebody to assist you. That's what my recommendation would be.
Awesome, ma'am. Thank you so much. General Lodi?
Yeah, so I would, I'm fascinated at social media. I'm fascinated with what women in particular, because a couple of the Facebook pages I'm on is about women's mentorship. I'm fascinated with how much people are willing to kind of crowdsource in terms of their issues, challenges, dilemmas, decisions about the Army. And this is not, I say that with zero judgment. I appreciate I'm 50 some odd years old and I'm just a bystander watching a new generation come along. But I can't help but deep down inside, whenever I see someone putting out on social media for Opine, something that I think a leader, like I just want to say, good God, don't you have a leader that can help you with this, that your last resort is to publicly crowdsource or anonymously crowdsource the direction, guidance that you should be getting from someone within your own organization. And so I just find that fascinating, a fascinating generational observation. But I think it speaks to a little bit larger issue where I've been very successful exploiting my strengths in the human dimension. I've been very successful. I've been most successful when as Maria said, when I've been vulnerable, when I've shown vulnerability, and when I've been extraordinarily trusting. I've received all that back in return from folks I've served with. I think a lot of people are afraid of being too involved or too intrusive or too connected to the people they work with or the people they lead, for fear of the perception of inappropriateness. And I'm not naive, and I understand a new person to the Army has to navigate where those boundaries are. But I would just say my own advice always is to err on the side of being more connected at the risk of the perception of impropriety than to build a wall around yourself. You simply are not going to survive in this Army if you wall yourself off to the human dimension and the emotional side of leadership. And I just, that's my DNA. And that's how I would guide other. That's how I think that's the example I set with the people I lead. And I think I've been able to, I think, shape some folks along the way who have learned that there's more reward than risk in letting some of those barriers down and opening yourself up to that trust.
No, that was wonderful, ladies, both of you. And You are so right, ma'am, about the social media. I'm amazed when I see people put stuff on there that I'm like, you really want to know their answer? Because it's not going to be what you want to hear sometimes. And then they get into wars. So thank you so much for that. And so I'm going to turn this over to Mari. So she's going to help facilitate the questions. I'm going to put out there again, if you all have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put the questions in the chat room. We're going to ask them for you. And as you see, the dialogue that we're having, I'm so glad you're bringing it up, because probably almost all of us, if not the majority of us, are thinking the same way. How do we connect with people without being afraid of the wrong perception? How do we connect with people to not be alone in our own thoughts if you don't have siblings? And so what do we do as leaders, as subordinates, to be able to have that connective relationship in our offices, in our formation? So thank you so much, ladies. So I'm going to go to Vanessa Thompson, and then Mari's going to take it over from there and start fielding the questions. Vanessa? Oh, you're on mute.
There we go.
There you go.
Can everybody hear me? So this is not a question, but more like a testimony from, at that time, Lieutenant Colonel Lodi. I was under her command. I hope she remembers me. I was at that time a Specialist Alvarado, and then we deployed to Key West. I became Sergeant Alvarado. In the background, in my deployment and under her command, I was in a background just observing her. And I will say she is the true leader that I have seen in the Army, because I have seen her not really beaten down by male officers about some stuff that they would do. And I will see her right away, like, no, I am your battalion commander. You will do this. And that is a true leader right there. And that's like so inspiring to see that as a soldier. And then also talking to Chaplain Crosswhite, our battalion chaplain, that is totally amazing. And then seeing her raising up the ranks is truly amazing. And also give me aspirations to continue to be in the military, and as a woman, especially as a minority, where I be kicked down because of, of my rank or because I'm a female. I'm like, hey, Colonel Lodi can do it, Major General Lodi can do it, I can do it.
Awesome. That was wonderful. That was a great testimony, because we don't know that, well, people don't realize you're a role model, even though you don't ask to be. And I like the message that General Gainey, ma'am, if you could come online and tell what you just put in the chat room, because I know you always have great guidance and mentorship. So ma'am, if you could open up.
All right, sorry. When I think about mentoring, remember that you can have more than one mentor at different stages in your life, and even at the same time, to help you work through different issues. Sometimes my mentors were men. The only female mentor I had, because I came in the dark ages, this is 1978, was my mom. But her common sense really helped me work through a lot of issues. But the male mentors I had were very supportive, and I would go to them with different issues. And they were great coaches and mentors to help me through my entire career. And just remember, you as General Barrett and General Lodi said, look to people whose performance you admire, their character, how they deal with issues, and just think of the challenge you're in and say, who can I map myself against? That's how I want to emulate. That's who I want to be the mirror image of. And they can help you work through that image, because none of us are perfect in everything. So different people are going to have different skill sets, and go to them when you need their special talents.
That's awesome, ma'am. Always great. Go ahead, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great point. And I want to tease out the thing that General Gainey just said on male mentors. I don't know if this will come as a surprise, but you still have a number of men out there who want to provide great leadership to the women in their command, but they are not sure how. And I think we have an obligation to help them, to offer up to either our peers or maybe our boss, hey, if there's ever a question that comes up, I can be a resource to you. I recently had somebody in a pre-command course ask me about how do I keep, it was a combat arms formation that he was going to be going into. How do I keep high performing combat arms females in my formation, of which there are not that many? How do I keep them in? How do I retain them? And it was kind of funny because the advice that I gave them sounded a lot like advice that you would give to men who might be, you know, what are the family challenges? Try to understand what motivates them, what's their passion, and try to address it that way. But at the end, that didn't sound very much like you can have the same conversations with men. I said, if you're still not sure about how to have this conversation with females, go find a female colleague and try it out on her. You know, and I think you'll find that, you know, I would be receptive to somebody saying, hey, I need to give somebody some counsel on something. How do you think I should approach it? I think it speaks volumes of that leader to seek that out. And so I would also ask the women offer to their male colleagues the opportunity for consulting on these types of issues, because there's still some reticence that maybe they might say the wrong thing, or, you know, I really can't, you know, this is trouble area to counsel women on, you know, whether or not C-sections matter with taking the ACFT. This was a conversation I had with somebody when we were doing the leg tuck. And I finally said, how about you have the conversation with her? I mean, I'm happy to talk to women about this, but you've got to learn to have this conversation too. And I think we have an obligation to help them get comfortable with being mentors to women.
Ma'am, that was great. And I appreciate you all bringing that up, which is why we have the FMFP as an all-inclusive program. Because when I first started, my mentors were male, until I started seeing people like General Gainey at the time, who was not General Gainey, but then I got to see her rise through the ranks. And I said, I'm gonna be just like her. And if nothing else, she just adopted me. I'm a twin sister. So she had twins she didn't actually have, but she has us. And so thank you so much for that. Now I'm gonna turn it over to Mari, because we have a lot of questions in the chat room, and I'm so excited about that. So Mari, take it away. Let's start answering those questions.
Ladies, thank you so much for your attendance. And again, ma'am, ladies, just wanted to say that the true strength that you mentioned is about acknowledging our difference. And I got to say that I did not understand the secret power of that till later on in my career. And then I understood that although I am one, just no sisters in the military, but I do have many sisters. And when truly needed, Colonel PV and the team is always there. And that to me is the true definition of sisters from another mistress. Kay and St. Jean to everyone asks, how do you overcome a workforce where male favoritism is the standard? For example, when you present an idea to the leadership and it gets shut down, but a male counterpart presents the exact same idea to said leadership and is praised for it and sees its turn from fruition, how do you regain your value? How do you change the status of solidify your status to be taken seriously with future endeavors?
General Lodi, we'll let you answer that question first, ma'am, and then General Barrett.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And I think really this may not be the popular may not be the popular approach, but I've always been thought that karma works in mysterious ways. And I think the people who you want to realize that you had just said that same thing do, and those are typically the people that matter. I think the universe has a way of kind of, and I'm not discounting how difficult or even traumatic it can be to feel marginalized or feel like you just said the same thing that someone else said and that person seems to be getting the credit or be recognized as having the more valuable input. But I think the people, not to oversimplify it, but I think the people who matter are the ones that are paying attention and understanding who's doing the work, and who's got the ideas, who's got the talent, and who's got the potential. And those are the people that typically prevail in any organization. And so I've tried when I've been in that situation to be less concerned with the relative small-mindedness of the people around me and to stay more focused on the people who do understand what I can contribute to the organization, because that contribution will beget more contribution and more of the type of recognition that will eventually advance whatever it is that the organization is trying to do.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
I
Yes.
agree with everything that Paula said on people take notice of those that really are delivering for the organization and that have the work ethic, that are putting skin in the game. The right leaders will notice that. What I would offer though is it is hard to feel like, you know, your purpose is to make a difference and you're trying to make a difference and you don't feel that's resonating. I would offer, in addition to what Paula said, is this is where that trusted agent in an organization comes into play. And you can say, hey, is it my imagination or did this just happen? And not validation so that you can be right, but to go from there and say, what is it that I might need to do to maybe frame my argument a little bit better. Maybe that was it. You had the right idea, you had the same idea, but maybe there was something else there. That trusted agent will tell you whether or not this is something that maybe there's something there to be. I will tell you, if you go to War College, they'll tell you that you're not graded on your participation, you're graded on your quality of input in the class. And I had a particular instructor in our small group seminar, and I would try to say something qualitative during the class, not quantitative. And he just never said anything back. So after a while, I had to go back to it. I went to one of the fellow students, seminar mates, and I said, okay, is it me? Am I making critical, providing critical thinking to this, this subject matter when I'm participating in class? And then once they told me, hey, no, there's nothing wrong with what you're saying, Maria. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop worrying about it. I'm just going to drive on. So trusted agents can be really helpful with helping you not carry around some extra baggage in your rucksack that really isn't that important.
Oh, ma'am. And I would like, if General Gainey, would you please read what you wrote in there? Because I know you've told me that in the past before. So I think that is something worth everybody hearing. And it fits along with what these ladies just said. Go ahead, ma'am.
So very true. Exactly. You are going to have that occur more than once where you will be ignored. So take that opportunity to amplify their idea and say, what a great idea. That's great. And I think we could add to it in this way or that way, complimenting them. Those who heard you already say this exact same thing are going to go, hey, she's not being snarky. She's being smart. She's getting her point across, but in making him look good, but she's able to do it in a nice manner in which they respect you because you're going to be known about your reputation, and people want that type of person on the job. Because if you do a good job, people are going to start to recognize that. It's how you respond to those difficult situations and maintain your cool and don't snark back.
And I will tell you from personal experience, I used her method, and it worked perfectly, because people are like, well, dear, you just said that. I know, but clearly I didn't get the recognition for it. But hey, I'm a team player. Hey, that's a great idea. And so I appreciate that, because we also get known for being snarky or coming back, and then we end up causing that friction in the relationship with people you're going to have to work with on a daily basis. Is it bowing down? Absolutely not. It's being strategic in how you're working with the people that you're going to work with on a daily basis. And so understanding that they are going to know you're just as smart by helping to understand that you have something to say. But if it doesn't come out the way you expect it to, like I said, General Gainey gave me that a long time ago, and I use it. I was like, okay, now they know who to come to. So with that, I also want to add in here, because we're going to volley back and forth. Lieutenant Colonel Clydelia Pritchard Brown, I don't know if you all know her, wave her hand a little bit. She's my twin. She's going to help Mari go back and forth, because like I said, we have a lot of questions in there, and I'm so happy. So Delia, you send the next questions, and Mari and Delia will go back and forth, and we'll make sure we get everybody heard. And again, if there's anything you want to ask, please raise your hand in there if you want to ask it yourself or comment. Delia, what's the next question, please?
So real quickly, two things real quick. It's Lieutenant Colonel Pritchard Allen, Dia. I'm not you.
We're too close.
Okay, that's all right. But the second thing, I just want to kind of real quickly take a quick spin on what they were saying. All three, excellent, because that's exactly how we should approach it. I was actually in that same exact position and had a concern, because my male counterparts were noticing that this was happening. And just a quick situation happened. I was in, again, only female in the battalion command. I made a statement after being asked. Our whole team had been asked by our brigade commander. So I gave an answer for it. It was the answer that allowed my command to go from number 8 of 8 to number 2 of 8. Completely dismissed it immediately. And so everyone's looking and saying, well, but that's how she became successful. So I wrote the statement down. I didn't get snarky. I didn't get, ugly, because again, General Gain has been both of our mentors, and I've had several other mentors. I gave it to my battle buddy, my male battle buddy, and I told him, say this in about 10 minutes. And he said it in 10 minutes, read it verbatim. That same brigade commander that dismissed me, that doesn't make sense, and literally said, that doesn't make sense. Oh no, that doesn't even make sense. Okay. So I gave it to my battle buddy. He read it verbatim. The brigade commander turns to him and says, now that's what I'm talking about. That's the idea that I'm saying. And says, so let's expound on that. And so everyone turns to me and I say, because I had mentioned, guys, you're now seeing what has happened. And so as General Gainey and as all three mentioned, and especially General Barrett mentioned, after that meeting, I went to a mentor and said, now this just happened, and leaders saw it. Now, what is my next step? And so there was a strategic method of going through to certain leaders. And so guys, there's, as they just mentioned, there's a way to do it. You do want to go off on them, but there's a strategic way that you have to approach it, because again, you don't want to be the angry person coming in being snarky. So all three had excellent points. So we have a couple of questions here, and I want to kind of read it real quickly, and then the question at the end. And this question is from Captain Bolden. Antonia Bolden says, ladies, I'm curious as to how you both have developed environments where your subordinates can feel comfortable with making mistakes and learning from them. I'd love to see this in a leader and hope that I provide this to my soldiers. I think we as leaders aspire to it, but we do not always meet the mark. And sometimes rank seems to interfere with subordinates feeling free to make mistakes and learn. Here's the question. What are some of the things you have done to build trust and create such an environment and make this the norm, this organization's culture for our soldiers?
Who do you want to answer first? Oh, go ahead.
So, yeah, I'll start. So one thing I would tell people is never underestimate the power of your first, a soldier's first assignment. And I mentioned that I had a really good battalion commander, and he had high standards. And, he held us accountable. And so you know, I'm going to say as a lieutenant, I made my share of mistakes. And yet, he still would, and so I could have gotten really super focused on the mistakes that I was making. But he still nominated me to attend some training on behalf of the battalion where nobody else was being asked to do that training. We could have, he still rewarded the battalion. You know, we had events where, you know, he was going to cut us some slack and unexpectedly give us half a day off, and just little things like that. Even though he was tough on us, he was also a compassionate leader, and took care of us. And so, you know, that becomes part of your DNA growing up. And I think that's a good part of, where I'm at, is when everything is going wrong around you, you know, whether it's an exercise, and the unit, especially if you're new to the platoon, the company, the battalion, everybody's looking at you to see what it is that you're going to do. And I think it's, first of all, you know, we're accountable. This didn't work out the way that we wanted it to. I want to understand why it didn't work out. And there's also this, you know, praise in public, counsel in private piece of this is, you know, you can be the screaming, ranting leader of your formation, and that really doesn't ever work out really well. Praise in public, you know, counsel in private. But hold people accountable, be fair, you know, be, you know, honestly, the more complex a mission is, the calmer I'm going to get, because I know something is not going to go perfectly. And I've actually prepared for that. So when somebody comes up and they go, this didn't go well, that's okay, right? Is everything else going the way that it should be? Yes. All right, keep driving on. We'll deal with this one later. And that's, do we understand why that happened? Yes. Okay. Come back and talk to me about that later. And that's it. It's not magic. But I do believe that it was kind of, I had a really good example growing up. I don't, you know, if I had the other type of leader, bad example, you know, I don't know what I would have learned from that. Over.
Excellent.
General Lodi?
Yeah, so I don't know, it must be maybe genetic. Maria, I never put these two and two together to thank mom and dad for that. I also have this remarkable gene that, thank God, allows me to kind of feel myself become calmer the more complicated a situation becomes. And so
Stuart, can you put yourself on mute, please? Stuart, thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
yeah, so you know, I kind of have that, and I think a lot of that chalks up to experience and deliberately putting yourself in uncomfortable situations so that you can be in a position to be calm and confident when mistakes are being made and when adversity kind of strikes. I think two things. When, as a leader, if the base question is, how do you let your organization know that it's okay to make mistakes? I think everything has to do with how you respond to that first catastrophic mistake. And so I've been in units where you just know everybody's looking at you going, oh God, we have bad news. We've got to bring the boss. What's going to happen next? And there's a lot to be said for just calmly, you know, even if you have to over dismiss whatever mistake has been made, I think in battalion command, someone lost a box of ammunition and I was like, okay, like, oh, how'd that happen? And people were just like, oh my God, you thought you were gonna like kill everybody, so it's just, people will know that you're serious when you say that you want the organization to grow and learn from mistakes. If you yourself model that it's okay to make mistakes. The other thing I think you can do is, and what I try to do, I try at every chance. We have a brilliant command sergeant major in charge of U.S. Army MedCom right now, Command Sergeant Major Huff, who says, in a crisis, you will not rise to the occasion. You will default to your lowest level of training. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think that you can train yourself to be a bit, you can train yourself to put so much on your plate that you know where the seams and cracks are. And so that when those seams and cracks appear in real life, that you can be comfortable and calm and methodical in how you navigate through them. And so in places where I've been in command before and in the command I have right now, I am all about imposing an uncomfortable environment for the sake of seeing where we have seams and cracks now, so that I do not have to confront where those seams and cracks and mistakes will be made in crisis. And so I think it's work in progress. There's a lot of people that you say you'll accept mistakes, but will you really accept mistakes? And will this really show up down the road on my OER? But you can model it certainly by how you receive bad information, and you can force it certainly if you're in a position of leadership by intentionally putting so much on folks' plate for the purpose of watching where they'll break, so that you can have that teachable moment and you can understand more about your organization than in crisis than when you started.
Well, and you both make an absolutely great point. It's how you react, and soldiers learn from how you react, just like our parents. If our parents chew us out and that's it, you get your phone taken away with this generation. You don't want to make another mistake based on their reaction. But the key behind it is mentoring and bringing them, hey, look, you learned that. Let's learn this. What we learn. I always have to tell them, what'd you get out of this, so that we try not to make it again. So I appreciate you all saying that. Thank you so much. All right, Mari, who's our next person?
Angela Hines asks, at the senior level, how do you best navigate trust among your peers, both male and female, within your career path? How do you determine how much you could share or confide with your peers without fear of disloyalty or reprisal? Great question.
Wow. All right, who would like to fill that? Ma'am, General Lodi, we'll let you hit that one. Oh, General Barrett, we'll let you hit it first. You came on first.
So I have to believe that, there are very hard problems to solve in the Army. And this is what we're supposed to be spending our time, is helping the Army think through its greatest challenges and helping it achieve its objectives. That's not always easy. And certainly we are also supposed to bring our subject matter expertise to the game. But we also have to balance that with the Army meeting its challenges. And I really feel like if we're worrying about who to trust, we have got this all completely wrong. And I realize that I'm not naive in the fact that if somebody is trying to push a certain initiative that is to the decrement of my mission, I should get wrapped around the axle and hunker in and come up with a plan and strategize to defeat that. that is a really hard place for me to operate from. It just doesn't work for me. And while I'm not naive, I really will take a step back and think through, what are we trying to achieve? What are the Army objectives? What is the hard problem to solve here? If the problem was easy to solve and there were no consequences for anybody, then we would have already done it and it wouldn't be a hard problem. So, you know, I kind of have this outer body experience where you just kind of step back and you go, okay, this is what I need to communicate. These are the people who I think I need to communicate it to, and get a sense of how big this challenge is for the Army. And then that will tell me how hard I want to push at something. And then at the end of the day, I have an obligation to lead up. And if I don't lead up, then I'm delinquent in my duties. And so this idea of, you know, who to trust, who not to trust in terms of putting something forward, it's a noise level that I just really, I don't deal well with. It's extra reps and calories burning for not really a good outcome. And I have an obligation to lead up. And so my last resort is, if it really is that significant, I have an obligation to put that in front of the right senior leaders, having failed with everything else. But that I'm very cognizant of. If you're going to get to that point, it better be really good and impactful. But you know, we have an obligation to do that.
Awesome. General Lodi?
Yeah, so I think on the question was about how do you know where to draw boundaries on trust? Is that true?
Ma'am, how do you know who to trust, and how do you, if for fear of reprisals or disloyalty, how do you know who to trust, and how do you navigate that line within the senior leadership?
Oh, yeah, I think I would agree with Lieutenant General Barrett on this one, that you know, you have to stay kind of anchored on who is most focused on the mission at hand, and you know, just having a good intuitive, instinctive sense for who's most connected to the objectives of what you're trying to achieve. You know, I was astonished that very late in my career, War College, I got some very profound training in leadership, emotional intelligence, and specifically how to speed read people. And I thought that it was at the Naval War College, and this notion of being able to speed read people, I think the thought was that you would be able to lead people better if you could speed read, you know, who they are, what motivates them, what makes them tick. But I think when it comes to trust, I think if we could, I think there's something to be said for, if you are human dimension oriented, if you're very emotionally intelligent, if you understand people, then you can get to who you can trust a little bit quicker. And I again, I'll just hit home. I thought that it was really, I was grateful for all the training at the Naval War College, but I thought, I'm like, my gosh, I'm a colonel in the United States Army. Why is this the first time that somebody has introduced this concept to me? Because this is very helpful in terms of navigating situations where I really need to know, can I trust what this person's telling me or not?
Well, ma'am, and both of you bring up a great point of, we tell our kids now, you know, be careful who you choose as a friend. You know, you don't know if you're really getting the right person, or that honeymoon phase of them showing you who they want you to think they are. And then all of a sudden you find out you might have hooked up with the wrong people. It's a trust, and you all said it earlier, it's about building that trust, and it takes time. so that you can feel confident that that's the person you can confide in or truly trust in. Okay. Thank you. All three of you both of you great answers, but General Gainey is continuing to put some information, some great nuggets in the chat room. I'm going to let Delia, you go on and get the next question.
Okay, I've got a quick statement real quickly just to kind of help. There was a statement earlier, we were talking about social media and being careful with what you put on the social media. And I have Latoya Green here, great soldier that provides guidance on social media. So social media can be used in a positive way and to hit out to the masses. And so that's one thing that I think she wanted to help share with that. Being careful with what you're putting as far as personal, certain business, things like that, absolutely. Being careful. But as Latoya was saying, it's definitely a great platform when you can't reach each person individually. This is an opportunity, and we've got a number of mentor groups that are online that you're able to ask those questions, and people are more than happy to come in and give you some straightforward, transparent guidance. So thanks so much for that, Latoya. Here's a question coming from Catherine Coviello. It says, glad to see several gentlemen on the call. Now here's the question, can both guest speakers cover the topic of allyship? What that is what they have had success with to help men become better teammates, allies, and advocates for women in the workforce. And here's the little caveat to that. When you see that you can't help them become advocates and you see that there's still a challenge with them, how do you approach that situation? So it's a two-part question. And we'll start with General Lodi. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, so I was stationed at Fort Benning a few years back, and no offense to Fort Benning, but it's still, as I in-processed Fort Benning, the more times I was asked where my husband was going to be, what unit my husband was assigned to, the more I thought that Fort Benning was a little bit behind the times, because I was reporting in as a 06 commander at Fort Benning, but people were really interested in who my husband was, and he didn't PCS there with me. But I was asked to be their Women's History Month guest speaker, and I jokingly said I felt a little profiled in that because I was the only female senior leader there at the time. But so at the Maneuver Center of Excellence, to be the Women's History Month guest speaker, I thought it was appropriate to give a nod to all the male leaders who had given me an opportunity to have a voice and to play a role in various missions and to be in the forefront of various operational efforts, be it downrange in Iraq or in garrison. And I was very fortunate to have a lot of male allies. And so that notion of allyship is not lost on me, that I embrace the power of this forum and of having, females lifting other females up. But I am really grateful and indebted to the male leaders who have let me excel in my own right. And so I think as far as the ones who don't, I think I just go back to my previous answer on when you say something and it gets discounted or it gets, I just think that they have their day. They really do have their day. And they're entitled to their own opinion about what you do and don't deliver. But the ones that don't align themselves to the total force don't align themselves to the total force. And if you can't ally, there's not a lot you can do except try to have your performance speak for itself, and stay operationally focused and make sure that at some point, your relevance has some value that then will force a swing in perception. Because a lot of folks who start out not believing that you bring value, have that perception, have that rooted in perception, have that thought rooted in perception. And so, the only thing you can do at that point is just to change that perception.
Awesome, ma'am. Thank you so much. Go ahead, ma'am.
So, I mean, when I think about allyship, I think about, you know, is allyship, you know, a good thing? And I think everybody would say yes. And then I think I would take a look at who your allies are, and if it's missing, right? If you're expecting the men to come to you to develop that allyship, you might be waiting, right? You may have to accept that you're going to initiate the contact. And maybe it's something like, hey, I'd like you to come down to my unit and talk to my leaders or my formation about something. And then offer to return the favor. And I think it goes to General Gainey's earlier comment about being a good teammate and selecting good teammates. And so that really is the essence of allyship. And you will find that you will build then over time the bonds that won't go away. But if you're waiting for it to happen, it may not recognize as far as we have come. There are some things of unit assignments and deployments and stationing where it is not still a natural thing to, you know, and I'll give you an example. When you, for those, if you go out to Fort Knox to a board, you know, the women will be, there are a certain number of women on a board, and then there are, you know, the rest is, and then there's everybody else. And so if you're waiting for the men to say, hey, we're all going to such and such restaurant tonight, do you want to join us? You may have to invite yourself along. You may need to initiate, I'm going out to this place tonight, are you going to come along? And I know that sounds very simplistic, but this is how it plays out. And sometimes you have to be the first mover.
Awesome, ma'am. And both of you have, you know, captured why it's so important to make sure you're paying attention, and before you react or respond or act in a way that could cause more friction, think strategically about how you're going to handle those situations. So I really appreciate that. We're going to have one more question, and we're going to have an opportunity for our guests and then General Gainey to close out with some final comments. And then I'm going to share some information on some of the newest chapters we've just recently established out here in the land of FMMP. So I will let Barrett, if you'll answer the next question, please, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Erica Lewis asked, any advice for dealing with imposter syndrome as a woman moving into more of a leadership role or with the aspiration of attaining a leadership role?
Ooh, and you want to define imposter syndrome for people?
Imposter syndrome is when you believe that you don't really belong there. And I know that in the military, prospectively, most of us women have gone where we actually think, did I really earn to be here, or did they just let me into the door?
Gotcha. General Lodi? Oh, I'm sorry, General Barrett. So you first.
Sometimes I find that we're not really good at taking inventory of what we're good at and seeing ourselves objectively. I might have been, I remember having a discussion with a boss when I was a field grade about, hey, what are the things I need to work on, right? Everybody needs to work on something. And he was like, no, Maria, I really can't think about anything that you need to work on. Well, surely I could do better here, here, and here. He's like, no, I think you're good. And so you can be so perhaps focused on really, it's good to have self-improvement, lifelong learner part of your DNA, but don't have it be part of your DNA to the point where it does kind of encourage that I don't belong here. I have a lot of things that I don't do really well. And then you're not really taking stock of the things that you do well. That you're a great team builder, that you connect with people really well, that you foster a climate where underwriting honest mistakes is part of the organization and the culture. So we can very easily forget those things, and I think that is a step towards this imposter syndrome of I don't know why I'm here, and I don't understand why the Army put me here, or worse, the only reason why I'm here is because they needed a woman on the team. I think that's a really bad place to be. But I think you start with taking inventory of your strengths, and that we all have things that we have to work on. That's fine. Just don't let that consume the conversation in a negative way.
Well, great answer. General Lodi?
Yeah, so I would just say three things. So first and foremost, when I have felt myself along my career feeling like I'm alone in a room full of people questioning whether or not I belong at that level or in that particular room, I have to check myself and realize, am I making myself feel that way, or is the room making me feel that way? Because many times it is my own, it is the imposter syndrome is of my own doing. And it is not because there's any external pressure for me to feel that way. And so first and foremost, I check myself and just say, am I doing this am I building this all up in my own head? Or is there truly something here that would give me pause or cause me to have to defend my place or my presence? If I did find myself needing to question whether or not I truly belonged somewhere, I would say you can always combat emotion with data. So I was in resident CGSC, and I was the only female in my small group. And about 3 weeks in, there was a cohort of us that would always stay behind, and I had kids while I was there, so I would always stay in the classroom to get my homework done, so that when I went home, I could focus on the family. And about 3-4 weeks in, someone looked at me. One of the gentlemen in this seminar looked at me and said, you're pretty squared away. And if we'd have had to do peer evaluations on the first day, I'd have put you at the bottom, but you're actually, if we had to do them today, you'd be kind of at the top. And I said, well, why would you have put me at the bottom at the beginning of the course? And he said, well, you're female and you're medical, and we just thought like you were here because you had to, like every seminar gets a woman, like a train, I'm a training aide. And and so I actually told him, I said, well, actually, you all ACC at the time, Army competitive category had a 50% selection rate for resident CGSC, but the AMED had about a 12% selection rate for resident CGSC. And so I said, so actually for me to be here as an AMED officer, I actually had to really distinguish myself much more than you did. So should not be a surprise to you that I am high performing or should be rated at the upper, at least the upper part of the seminar. But anyway, my point there was that what was helpful for me was to fall back on the data that spoke to, and even in CSL commands or any other, you know, no, I went through the same process you did. And in many cases, the AMED has a much finer filter for me to be CSL command, War College, CGS, you know, so data can usually help you navigate your way through this raw emotional feeling that maybe you don't belong. And then I'll give a plug to CAP. I'll give a plug to the command assessment program. And I think that for us as women, I've said this to Army Medical Department cohorts. I think CAP in many ways becomes the great equalizer for skill sets that do not come out in a file. For skill sets that are highly desirable and highly effective and highly important when leading people, that a file will never tell you. And I think that some of those soft skills that no one will ever write on your OER, rarely will people have the ability to kind of put into words on your OER the softer side of how you influence mission success. But I think when you show up at CAP, some of those things that lead us to imposter syndrome as women specifically come to the forefront as very desirable and optimal qualities when it comes to actually the nuts and bolts of nurturing and caring for and inspiring and leading soldiers. And so I think, like I said, you versus, is this a you feeling you're imposing on yourself, or is this something someone else is doing to you? Do you have data to support why you are sitting at that table? And then again, like a little plug for CAP, because I think CAP's gonna eventually, I'm very curious to see if CAP turns the tide a little bit on diversity, because we know that there are qualities that people bring into leadership roles that don't always get articulated in our personnel file. And in fact, I would talk to the secretary the other day, and she had a moment where she thought about possibly looking at the climate and culture in units that are being led by women. And was there a differential to how soldiers felt about how they were treated, the climate, the culture, the trust, and was there a gender differential to that? And so I would just say on the imposter syndrome, I'd be very careful. It's real, it exists. We've all felt it probably. But try to anchor yourself to a few things that might help you navigate your way realistically through it. Over.
Thank you so much, ladies. And I will just, cap what you all just said, to going back to the theme here. It's not necessarily just making history, but having it as a family affair. When you are at your lowest or your weakest or your most vulnerable or your self-doubt, and we are our hardest critics on ourselves, I mean, we really are. You have to reach out to someone so they can pump you back up and let you know you belong here. If you don't have that data, if you don't have the ability to sit back and say, especially after you make a mistake, have that person that you can call on and say, okay, I'm the worst thing since whatever, and that person will pump you back up. My sister, I'll pick up the phone and call her, and she will pump me up so much to where I'll kick the door in the next day and I'm like, all right, I'm ready for this. Because you sometimes have to have someone bring you out of that bad spot to where you remind yourself, I belong here. I earned to be here. Just like the ladies that are here before us, you earned your position. It wasn't given to you. You didn't have to do anything other than what you were asked to do, and then you did great at it. And so I thank you so much for your comments. I want to, before I go on to the next or us closing out, General Gainey, would you like to add some thoughts to that as well?
No, I thought this was a great session, and it is about sisters helping sisters, whether they're biological or not, because I leveraged many a girlfriend, whether they were military or civilian, just to be able to walk in the door, close it, scream at the top of my lungs silently, and then walk back out, because that was the only way I could vent.
Absolutely, ma'am. And you know what? You bring up a great point, and I want to bring that in as we're getting ready to close out the evening. Thank you so much for all of the comments. But I do want to be able to make sure you all understand everything that we've discussed this evening applies to civilians as well. We may wear the uniform, we may talk about the commands we're in, we may talk about this, but the civilians are still in leadership positions. Civilians are also managing people. So everything these ladies have talked about, the great advice and thoughts they've given, apply to our civilian counterparts as well. Because you all are our sisters and brothers in arms. You're just wearing urban camouflage. That's all we say. That's civilian clothes. And so with that, I'd like to just take just a few minutes to allow each one of you, our speakers, General Barrett and General Lodi, please give some final thoughts before you close out, whether you think the FMMP is something that should go somewhere and continue to impress upon people to have that sisterhood and that unity and that relationship. And then just tell us where your thoughts are for the future, where you think the Army is going to go. Ma'am, General Barrett.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there. You know, there's one thing that Paula and I didn't mention tonight in terms of the family piece, and that was our husbands. So both of our husbands were military. And so in terms of having that ready-made person that you can yell and scream at the end of the day about something that happened while they were serving and even after they finished serving, because they had a reference point into what we were dealing with. You know, in a lot of cases, your partner is your best friend, right? And so in addition to family, in addition to other friends in the military, that other family that we build, we also had some built-in options at home with both of our husbands, and I know I'm very grateful every day that I come home and see my husband there, and how much he puts up with our crazy schedules and the demands of the position. So I remain very hopeful. When I got promoted, I asked the chief to promote me. And for some, that might seem like a no-brainer. But it was probably a week or two after the announcement of some of the family initiatives that got rolled out in April. And I told the chief and I told the secretary that I thought this was a good news story for it was a good news story for men. It was a good news story for women. And I see that we're making more common sense decisions about things that affect us. You know, I look at the body fat assessment in relation to the ACFT score that just came out. Brilliant, right? And you know, for 30 plus years, we've watched people who could perform physically really very well, but because, you know, they had a thin neck, it just wasn't working for them. And I think I see more of those types of decisions coming out, and I remain very hopeful about what it means for members of the Army in terms of whether or not the leadership has their back on these things. And I know Paula will say the same thing. We have the opportunity to talk to the chief. We have the opportunity to talk to the secretary on occasion. they really do care about how this is working and what our perceptions are of these initiatives and what we're challenged with. And so this forum in particular is essential for for giving insights to us in terms of where the leadership should go next. Thanks.
Thank you so much, ma'am. General Lodi?
Yeah, so thank you. Really, this has been, I hope the audience has gotten as much out of this as I have. So just a caveat off of what was said. So I was just recently interviewed by the Hawaii News Network, did a feature on Women's History Month, and on the tail end of it asked my opinion on the initiatives that the chief and the secretary have rolled out in terms of parental leave and other initiatives of that nature, and advances in how we handle sexual harassment, sexual assault cases and whatnot. And I said, you know, I have 2 daughters serving, and so I can't think of a better endorsement for my optimism of where our senior leaders are taking us. Than to know that there's an environment where I feel safe having my own daughters serve. And so to the group, because this is the female mentorship forum, you know, I would just say not to forget that change is incremental and change really starts locally. And not to ever underestimate the power of just existing in the space that you serve and what that is teaching other people. I think a lot of people, you know, tend to orient themselves on the firsts and the extraordinary and the remarkable, but all that first and extraordinary and remarkable is underpinned by the routine. So no Olympic athlete gets to the gold medal podium without hours and days and years of grinding out hard practice in just being basically good at what they're trying to do. And so, you know, someone on the chat asked about books, and I would offer Grit by Angela Duckworth. And to never underestimate effort counts as much as achievement. And so we like to really celebrate the person that scores the highest on the PT test. And we tend to forget about the person who's maybe 3 or 4 points better than they were the last time we took the test. And effort counts as much as achievement. And the gold medal person did not get on that podium without trials, tribulations, good days, bad days. But I would just say when it comes to the advances we've made with diversity, equity, and inclusion, never to really underestimate that just the routineness of showing up to work every day and doing a job well done counts towards those extraordinary advances that we see today about our senior leaders recognizing what's in the realm of possible. And so I'll leave the team with that. And Dea, really, I'm astonished. It's you know, we're an hour and a half in, and you know, nobody's tanked the call, and we've gotten through it. And so thank you. And thank you for your perseverance, making sure I have my FMMP debut.
Yay. Absolutely, ma'am. And look, and I would like to thank General Barrett for ensuring that every location that has any cyber connectivity has been on the line. No, just thank you so much, ladies. And before we end, I want to have a moment and give one of our sheroes of the FMMP a moment to talk to you all about the importance of family, the importance of having that support system to lean on. So Mari, can you give them a moment and share with them what you just recently experienced?
Yes, so ladies and gentlemen, about 4 weeks ago, I got a call that my mother, my sister, and my brother-in-law were in a very critical car accident. My mom, who's about 4'11", 120 pounds wet, has sustained over 19 broken bones in her body. Needless to say, I love my mom, but I didn't grow up with her. So I grew up with my dad. So I was in a hospital room with the doctors telling me she's not going to make it because she has Alzheimer's. She can't even breathe and practice her breathing. So her lungs are going to collapse. And this is going to be just the beginning of an ending. Very, very painful. But at the same time, the soldier in me just kicked in and said, you know what can I do to make this better? So I asked the doctor, this is my left limit. She's not going to die. Your right limit, tell me which one it is. Okay, so now that we have our right and left limits, let's move on from there. Let's see what we can do. So I was.
Oh, you went on mute, Mari.
Sorry, I was 2 weeks in a hospital room, 24 hours a day. I literally bathed in the bathroom, in this hospital bathroom, nursing my mom's to health because I was the only one that spoke English, knew the systems, and I'm fighting with doctors to give her the best care. And I have to say that I couldn't have done that without my sisters from the FMMP. And I say that because at times I was too exhausted to even speak, but I would send a text to Colonel PB and Colonel Fisher Brown and CJ Stale and the rest, and I would just say what I was going through and what I was thinking and discovering my own life, the things that I asked all my life, discovering all through the eyes of my mom who had Alzheimer's, and we just say random things at the time. Like discovering that she was married at 13 years old to a man who was 45 years old and knowing what her life has been like. But the main thing is that a few years ago, I would have told you, I would have had a hard time dealing with that because I had gone into, yes, you always want to fit in and you always want to be the same and you hold your tears and you just move on and smile. What I have had to acknowledge is that when I was crying in that bathroom, it wasn't necessarily that I was breaking apart. What I was doing is letting out the fumes, letting out the sweat, letting out the anger, embracing myself and saying, now I got to go back in. And at the same time, my sisters in arms, not being there physically, but spiritually speaking, handing me a handkerchief and saying, hey, here you go, cry, we'll go through this together. And then let's come back and regroup. And I have to say that just discovering that we are different and acknowledging that in our differences is our strength because we could find our common path. That to me has been the one thing that I am so thankful that the Army gave me. They gave me a family.
Well, thank you so much. And look, you got me blubbering over here because we went through it together and I said, I will not let her be by herself. So thank you, Mara, for sharing that. All right, focus. Military. All right. So what I do want to share with you all is just some great news about the U.S. The FMMP. So the U.S. Army RSN just established a chapter headed by General Frank. Fort Gordon just established their chapter. Team Redstone, I'm so honored because I have some Team Redstone brothers and sisters on the line. We just established our chapter, which is the biggest chapter of FMMP because it not only includes Army Materiel Command, it includes NASA, FBI, SMDC, and a host of others, Corps of Engineers, a host of others to bring people together, military and civilian. And who's coming to the table next? We're going to have Fort Knox established. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are establishing a chapter at Fort Hood. Enough said on that. That's all I'm gonna say. One will be coming to Fort Hood very soon because I think it still needs some help. a lot of locations. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for allowing us to come into your houses at night, coming into our lives, and just sharing the thoughts. And General Lodi, General Barrett, General Gainey, as always, General Gainey, you're always there supporting as our senior mentor. Ladies, thank you for sharing your lives with us. Hopefully this has been a little different from those news channels that you get to sit in. We got you in your own houses, and we allowed you to just be yourself. And so thank you so much for being open and honest and just transparent with us. I know I got a lot on my soul, so hopefully everyone else did. But thank you, God bless you, and you all having a wonderful rest of the week. Take care, have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies.